All right, all right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode. And may I just say, the first episode for 2026 on Crosschain with Kanishk. This is a show where we host a lot of conversations about interop, a lot of conversations about where crypto is going, and most importantly, we talk about our dev tools and where across is headed. As you know, this is an across podcast, but this time we'll also expand a little bit towards our competitors, people in the same domain as us, and even talk a little bit about our dev tools. And to do that, we have a really special guest with us today. Hey, Niha, how are you? And how's your day going?
Hey Kanishk, good. How are you? The day's been going quite well. It's Friday, but quite intense for a Friday.
Yeah. I think that's how all of our Fridays are here at Risk Labs. It's just, 5 days of the week is just go, go, go. And then 2 days, it's mostly monitoring.
Absolutely.
Sweet. So, first of all, thank you so much for coming on board for this particular episode. Um, I think we'll just dive right in. We have a set list of questions, everybody. But if you have anything else you want to know, any questions about the Swap API, any questions about Across's developer suite, um, things apart from the Swap API, please feel free to ask, and we'll bring those questions up either towards the end, or if the question is nice and fun, we'll even bring it towards the middle as well. Depends on how good your question is, honestly. So, with that said, um, Neha, you're a technical product manager at Across, right? Which means a lot of your day may go around talking about Across as a product, our Swap API, or even just the developer suite, because I know we worked closely together on how the APIs are performing.
Yeah.
So yeah, what does your day look like on a daily basis? What kind of responsibilities does a product person have at Across, or a product person have in general? And what would you like to share with our audience here?
Yeah, you got that right. Like being like a technical PM means you're sitting at the intersection of API design, engineering execution, and like ecosystem growth. So it's a complex role, and my role is to ensure that while the protocol behind our product is quite complex, the experience for the end user and our partners is still seamless. So my day to day would look like something like I would manage the map of our protocol, which basically decide involves deciding like what routes we support, what chains we support. I also spend a lot of time on our API ergonomics, like its response design. Like in cross-chain, like clarity is everything. So I want to ensure that our API works as designed, and when user sees a code returned by our API, the breakdown of the response is like consistent and transparent. And because we're in a real-time financial system, I'm also constantly monitoring and debugging. That means analyzing the health of our protocol, looking at the fill times, looking at the refund rates to spot issues before they escalate. So I would also spend a lot of time in our logs. So in short, like my job is to manage the complexity of the cross-chain stack so that the end user feels like moving assets across chains is very simple and easy.
That's so well put. And it's also such a huge responsibility because it's not just across this front end that uses this particular API now. It's also like a huge list of integrators and people who have real business with them, like MetaMask, using this particular API in order to power their users' transactions and help move money cross chain. Um, so yeah, um, on a very similar note, a lot of people who are watching this stream today will know across from this particular API called suggested fees,
Yeah.
in which we will just make a recommendation of how much the input amount should be for this particular transaction and how much output amount of money you'll get on the destination chain.
Yeah.
This money can be any token that the user requests. Um, so in this particular scenario, today across has evolved a lot. We don't just do bridging, now we're doing cross-chain swaps. And most importantly, even with cross-chain swaps, the vision is not just intense anymore, it's much more, right?
Yeah.
And that has helped across evolve beyond just um, a bridge to now basically being the best and the fastest way to move money across chains, especially when it comes to like Hyperliquid related applications,
Yeah.
because we do free bridging to USDH on Hyperliquid. So given all of that, given that across is evolving, and we launched Swap API in the middle of last year somewhere. Today it's not just intents. So could you shed a little bit more light on why it was necessary for Swap API itself to expand, and what all did we learn in the 6 months of period where the Swap API was live,
Yeah.
and where is it going in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very good question to ask a PM. And like for our viewers, like whoever's used Across in the past, you would see how much it has changed. Like when Across started, like our goal was to be the fastest and the most capital efficient bridge through intents. But as we scaled, we realized that an intents only world has some technical and economic ceilings. So the move to this multi-rail swap API was all about reliability and coverage. So there are three main reasons why intents alone were not enough. Like first, intents rely on a network of relayers, liquidity providers who front their own capital. So if a user wants to move a massive amount of a niche token, or if there's a sudden surge in demand of a specific route, the LP liquidity might get tapped out. And we didn't want to say no to a user because our relayers were rebalancing. So that's problem number one. Number two, for some long tail routes, like the cost of for a relayer to rebalance was more than the user was willing to pay a fee for. So on those specific routes, like intents were not just slow, but they were unprofitable. So we could never cater to those routes. And as a response, we built out our Swap API. So today, the Swap API acts as an intelligent router. It looks at a user's intent in its purest form and thinks like, what's the best way to get this done? And we've integrated like multiple rails alongside our intent engine. So first is integration with CCTP from Circle. So for USDC, we can use Circle's native mint and burn, and this requires zero LP liquidity, making it infinitely scalable for large transfers. Number two is OFT from LayerZero. For assets like USDT Zero, we're leveraging LayerZero's messaging standard. And as you also mentioned, Kanishk, like for sponsored routes, we are bridging to Hyperliquid is free and no slippage tax on swaps. So the best way to see this in action is to go to our front end or use our API, and you would see like the swap API will be juggling between like four different technologies at once. It might use CCTP for one leg, it might use intents for another route, or an OFT for a USDT to USDD route. So in a nutshell, we've ensured that we can serve 100% of the routes users care about, and we've kept the intent-based speed where it works best, and we've also added the heavy lifting of the native mint and burn where it provides like the best reliability for large sizes.
That's very, very well put. And there's so many nuggets in that answer itself that I want to slice and then discuss a little bit. Because I'll start off with the one with CCTP and bridging stablecoins. All of crypto is today moving towards stablecoins.
Yeah.
In the last 2 months, I would say I've seen the highest surge of neobanks ever.
Yeah.
And the use cases for these stablecoins have crossed every limit that I thought was possible. Specifically, when I was going to Argentina for DevConnect, and all I saw was stablecoin payment applications. And they all faced the same problem. Hey, our users have 8 chains integrated in our wallet, and we have USDC on every chain. How do we make them pay on this one chain? I'm like, guys, it's so simple. Integrate across. We'll
Yeah.
take care of everything else for you.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, intents have a ceiling. They are fast, they are efficient, but they have a ceiling,
Yeah.
especially with capital efficiency.
Exactly.
So, or even efficiency, I would just say with size. So, in that particular scenario, CCTP has been extremely helpful, and it's just made across as a product a lot stronger. I hope that's the right way to put it. Um, and the next thing that I wanted to stress a little bit more on was across his position in the Hyperliquid ecosystem, because all of crypto is moving towards Hyperliquid, And Hyperliquid itself is moving towards USDH. And I think at the center of all this movement lives a cross that helps people go to Hyperliquid and specifically Hypercore with USDH for free. Um, I know we've discussed a lot about the utilities of USDH internally, but in the future, we also know that you can literally trade with USDH on Hyperliquid or Hypercore, which is the same thing at this point. Um, and you can, make millions. Hopefully, everybody here makes millions because that's literally what you do on Hyperliquid, right? Um, and very recently, we also saw an application called markets.xyz, which was built by the Kinetic team, which had equity perps directly tradable by USDH. I mean, I could literally just go to a cross bridge for free and start trading then and there. So yeah, it's nice to see the swap API expand more. Before we move forward, any notes here for the developers that are listening to the podcast right now, and what changes for them? So if I have a developer who's watched our previous live streams, seen our previous videos, and they know that they can use the swap API to mention the input token, the output token, origin chain, destination chain, a few parameters like slippage, refund on origin, or stuff like that. They know all of this. When we say that the swap API now has CCTP, it now has mint and burn, it now has OFTs, for a developer like that who knows the swap API from the intent days, what changes and what should they know about it?
Yeah, so I also don't want to overwhelm our developer audience by listing out all the features that we have, but I
Yeah,
think
no, that's fine. I promise you, they'll catch up.
the main highlights, I think I'll say three things.
Yeah,
First, you can go from any token on any chain to any token on any chain. So we have moved past the canonical only transfers where you can only bridge like a specific token to the same token on another chain. That's classic bridging. Now the users can go from, let's say, Pepe on Base to USDC Spot on Hyperliquid, or you could go to ARP token or like any random token on any other chain. And our API handles this swap, bridge, swap logic automatically. The second highlight is like we have a deep integration with Hyperliquid. The API can deliver very specific output types like USDC spot, USDH, or USDT, as you also mentioned. And for a developer, this means that they don't have to write like custom glue code to handle these unique destination actions. And what's coming next is soon USDC Perp. So if you're on a chain like Unichain and you have USDC, the current way of getting into Hyperliquid ecosystem involves like jumping through a lot of hoops. But if you use across directly, you can go from USDC on Unichain to like USDC spot on Unichain on Hyperliquid today, and very soon in the future also to USDC Perp directly. The third highlight I want to mention is the automatic route selection. You can rely on our API to give you the best possible price, speed, cost, given the parameters you put in. So the end user doesn't need to choose between CCTP or OFT or intents. They can let this decision making defer to our API, and our API calculates the best path based on the cost, speed, and current liquidity, and returns an executable call data in a single go. So in short, we've built the swap API so that developers can offer the best execution guarantee to their users without having to integrate like 5 different bridge SDKs themselves.
I think that's so important because um, I look at time to integrate as the most important metric when I look at a new toolkit, SDK, or even a dev tool. Is it going to take me a month of work in production to be able to activate this? Just so I can serve a few users of mine who need this feature. And that's literally the opposite case here with the swap API. We saw teams integrate the swap API in 4 hours. Like we literally sent them to docs and they were like, oh, this is cool. 4 hours later, guys, we're done. Can we go to production? And we're like, shit, wow, that's amazing. And that's exactly the point you mentioned, that we return executable call data that you can literally just put into your wallet call, and you can just make
Yeah.
sure that you execute it then and there. I think that's really, really cool. And we've seen a lot of other SDKs now also adopt a similar method with returning call data. Because earlier, even with the suggested fee API, we had to return the parameters for the deposit call. We don't do that anymore. We literally give you the executable call data. So
Right.
that's nice. We see this trend over and over again where um, a lot of companies that work in interop look up to us. So we also have a huge responsibility of maintaining our principles high, being decentralization, transparency. And if a developer is watching this and you just want to know how we integrated the swap API on our front end, the code's open source. You can go to our GitHub, you can pick things up from there. I know a lot of you already do that. I see that on our Discord. So for sure, all the best. Go ahead and check that out. Next thing that I wanted to discuss was there's not just the swap API, right? Because there are chains, tokens, status,
Yeah.
another status API, sources. There's like five more APIs that a developer can choose and pick from as they're building these applications. Um, so with the swap API, could you please tell us a little bit more about how our API suite has evolved, and how a dev can. I'll dive deeper into how you can use the API. I just want to learn from you on how we should think of these APIs. Which one should we integrate where, and how do we get started and build a mental model around the five or six APIs that Across offers?
Um, yes, let's do that. How do I start? So, like, the evolution of our API really mirrors the evolution of the cross-chain space itself. Like, we've moved from building a bridge to building a cross-chain money movement layer. And initially, our API was strictly intents only. Suggested fees endpoint is what I'm talking about, where we expected the developer to craft the transaction themselves. We would return like a whole suite of fee that was related to the relayer fee, the LP fee, the origin, destination, you name it, and the fee is there. And the developer was expected to build a transaction and submit it. And God forbid, like if there's a swap involved, if they don't want to go from that specific token to the same token on a different chain, they would also have to integrate like different DEX providers on the origin and destination and maintain and connect those states and make sure that it's atomic. And that would have been a nightmare, although it was built for like simplicity and speed. So it was a gateway to intents. But as our partners' needs grew, we realized that this is not going to work. So we evolved by adding more to our API, making it a swap API that handles like swapping out of the box. And we partnered with dexes such as 0x, Uniswap, LeFi, and you don't have to like integrate these specific partners yourself to construct this executable call data that's built in out of the box. And if you want to include or exclude a specific DEX provider, you can always do that. Like we have endpoint for that, and we have like that level of granularity within our API construction. And we after that, like we also integrated with CCTP and OFT, so that the developers aren't capped by the LP liquidity ceiling. And then, of course, we had our specialized destinations where we just didn't stop at sending tokens. We also built support for specialized outputs like Hyperliquid spot market, which allows a user to go from like a wallet on Base directly into a position on Hyperliquid in one click. You could also use our API to have arbitrary messages within that. So if you want to open a position on Morpho or another chain, you can actually specify which function you want to call on which contract and how it should all perform. And it works out of the box with us. And as Kanishk was also mentioning, we have many more endpoints which you can query. We have our chains endpoints, which tells you what all chains we support. We have our token available routes endpoint, which tells you all the canonical tokens that are supported. We have a route to get our liquidity sources, which return 0x, Uniswap, LeFi, and like many, many more DEX providers in there. After you've submitted the transaction, you also might want to know where it currently is in the entire life cycle. So we also have a deposit status endpoint, which is giving you a very rich output of where your transaction currently is. If you want to sort through like deposits from a particular wallet address, if your app needs that, we also have a deposits endpoint, which will give you a very rich output of what that specific address did through across. And am I missing any endpoint? I guess
No.
not. And
Perfect.
if you think like I am missing an endpoint, if you have a feature request, something that we don't currently have, then yes, please shout. Please tell me or tell him, Kanishk, and we'll get that done.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing we take as a prime responsibility for us, that we listen to you. So if like that's literally how Swap API even came to existence. We just listened to what people told us,
Yeah.
and then we said, sure, we'll make it. And then we went heads down for a couple of weeks. Literally, one of our engineers didn't sleep for a couple of days, and then we had it ready. Shout out Donga, love that guy. So yeah. Also on a very similar front, you mentioned that Swap API is a mirror imitation of what the interop space requested and required as people move on with swapping and doing
Yeah.
cross-chain stuff. A very good thing that we also highlighted, and I want to shed more light on, is the fact that an intent is not just, hey, I have money on X chain, I want money on Y chain. That is literally just the start of an intent. The nobody comes to a bridge and thinks, oh, I'll just move money from chain A to chain B and I'm done with my day. Nobody does that. There's always an end goal in mind. Maybe I want to deposit onto Morpho, as you mentioned. Maybe I want to get some other token because I know it's going to rally up. Maybe I want to deposit onto Hyperliquid and either make a lot of money or lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
So there's always like an end goal with the intent itself, which people come to us with. And that's where actually the Swap API shines tremendously, because it's the simplest way to declare a destination action. You literally just have to go and just declare a JSON. There is no solidity that you need to write. There is no call data that you need to present, like we had to do that in the suggested fee API or any other competitor API as well. All of them will require you to put call data in it. And in the swap API, just come to us, write JavaScript, which is something that every entry level engineer learns. And that's it. You are ready with destination actions as well. And we've created apps like that on stream in 30 minutes, where it was just one API call and we're done. So SOAP API really shines in such cases where the intent is it's almost an extended intent. Like, I'm done with bridging, but now I just want to do another arbitrary action at the end of it. And you can chain these actions as well. So that's definitely one of the best features and something that needs to be talked about more, because the space definitely needs it. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that as well. One of our last questions before we move on to some questions from the audience is that, um, what are we working on internally that you can share about and not piss off the others in the company that are listening to the podcast? And most importantly, when people have these feature requests or they want to share feedback, what are some ways they can get in touch with us? Of course, Discord is one of the ways. You can directly tag us on Twitter as well. But from your point of view, as somebody in the product team who's leading the developer suite here, what's the best way to get in touch and share all of this?
Yeah. So some things that I'm working on currently are like like I'm carrying out a research to know like what more chains could we add to our protocol that the users want. So if you think that you use a specific chain but we don't support it, I want to hear about it. Another thing is like there's some routes like for example, like WBTC as an OFT exists out there. And currently we don't support it, but it's in progress. So very soon you'll see, if you have like a lot of Bitcoin or if you have a lot of wrapped Bitcoin and you want to move it across different OFT chains, you can also do that with Across very soon. I'm also working on like making the bridging experience to Hyperliquid better. So you already know that you can go directly to USDC spot, you can go to USDH or USDT, but in future you will also be able to go to USDT Perps. So that's something that will come soon. And of course, like API ergonomics, like there's no product manager on the face of this planet who's happy with the API that they have. So I'm always working on making it better. Um, and if you have ideas, I definitely want to hear them. You can pop by in our Discord, Telegram, both of which are linked in our docs, by the way. And Kanishk is like terminally online. So talk to him. You can DM me. And we're also going to be at ETH Denver. So you can catch our team there and give them feedback directly there. So all kinds of feedback would be very appreciated.
Absolutely. That's great. It's also funny because the only question that I wanted to ask, which was, I want like three of these at this point on DMs, which is literally that, hey, how do we get more chains supported by you guys? So that's it. Just tell us why you like that chain. Give
Yeah.
us some Dune dashboards. Tell us tangibly the value that it brings to you, and we'll make sure that we get you that chain on across as well. And sweet, that's majorly it. Nia, before we go, any closing notes, any things you want to ask our people who are listening as well, or just anything from your end?
Yeah, like I'm very excited about where this space is going, especially like how stable coins are becoming more and more mainstream. And Across is also evolving with this narrative to become more of a money movement there rather than like a simple classical bridge. And I want to know, like, from our listeners, like at what point do they think, okay, they want to hop from one chain to another, like, and what do they usually do after going to a new chain? So yeah, like those are the kinds of things that I want to know, like what makes you prefer across over our competitors, like, and also what makes you go to our competitors over across, like what can we do better?
Absolutely. Yeah, I know a lot of people will say, hey, we just want to hop over to a different chain because they're giving us some points. It's time to farm. It's time to
Yeah,
get free money.
yeah,
Um, but in some cases, it's also a real world use case because now with neobanks, everybody wants to, for example, we saw a lot of outflows towards Polygon simply because Polygon is a good chain for a lot of payment based use cases. And on a very different note, even when creator coins had taken off, we saw outflows towards base. So I feel that there's definitely an angle of trend towards it. But then a few chains like Arbitrum, they just never lose traction. And
yeah.
with like Hyperliquid living on Arbitrum, and that was the thing, Arbitrum had been the talk of the town.
Uh,
So, and it
that was
still is.
power DeFi. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, sweet. That was mostly it. Once again, Nia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
We'll
For
make
having
sure
me.
we cut some clips out of this and we post it online as well. So
Awesome.
thank you for all your stellar answers. That was really, really helpful. Thank you so much to all the, wow, we got about 150 people listening to us. That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining in, guys. This was really, really fun. We've got regular episodes scheduled moving forward, and we'll share more about what's happening, who's coming to speak, and all of that. And if you're somebody who's listening and you want to jump on one of these, that's also open because we want to, bring our users to the spotlight. So thank you so much for joining, everybody. This has been Crosschain with Kanishk, where we showed you how we improved the swap API. And in one of the next streams, we'd also build a couple of cool applications with it. So have a good day, or have a good night, or have a good evening wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you online.
Thanks,
Bye bye.
Ganesh. Bye.